Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast. Today's conversation is with Pauline Frommer. You likely know that name because, at the very least, you are aware of the Frommer Guides, an institution in the world of travel and a media empire that was started by Pauline's dad, Arthur. Arthur began publishing guides in 1957 when he wrote a book called Europe on $5 a Day, and that was while he was serving in the Army in Europe. He returned home to the U.S. but continued writing guidebooks, and clearly that was a wise choice on his part. And they just celebrated their 60th year in business, and that's just amazing. They continue to publish high-quality print books that utilize top-notch journalists, and that's something that Pauline is quite proud of, and with very good reason. Pauline has her hands full as the co-president of Frommer's, where she oversees the publication of the guidebooks, the Frommers.com website, and her 2 weekly radio shows that she hosts. Her husband calls her the Energizer Bunny, and that she is. She's a smart woman who, like me, worries about the future of travel and how the information we're receiving is manipulated by a handful of companies and how that affects our decision-making process, or really the lack of decision-making. It reminded me a little bit of my conversation with Samantha Brown, and that was episode 36. And that's where she talks about her new series on PBS that focuses on little-known places, little-known destinations you might never have previously considered visiting. So both of these ladies are really all about trying to provide a unique perspective on destinations. I had the chance to sit down with Pauline at the Travel and Adventure Show in the Bay Area this past weekend, where we were both speaking at the event. And it was delightful for me to hear about her background and what led her into the family business. And that actually wasn't a given early on. She wasn't necessarily going to do that. So we talked about that. And we also talk about a lot of things, but also really where she sees the future of travel. Before you hear that conversation, just a quick reminder that if you're new to the podcast, I encourage you to go back to previous episodes where I highlight other interesting and courageous women doing extraordinary things. And when you listen to those previous episodes, you'll discover strong women who have overcome adversity. They've started businesses, they've challenged themselves in a variety of ways, they've traveled the world, attained status as world-class athletes, and given up secure jobs to pursue their dreams and passions. You can find all the episodes at beboldpodcast.com, or you can subscribe wherever you find podcasts such as iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and now on Spotify. With that, please enjoy this conversation with Pauline Frommer. And what part of New York is it?
Greenwich Village.
I grew up in New Jersey and spent some time in New York, but not a ton of time. And it's still a really intimidating city for me.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
it is.
As a local, I can't walk down the street most days without running into someone I know. It's kind of like Maybury for me, except for Times Square. And that's unfortunately, people think it's intimidating because they often just go to Times Square. And that's frenetic and horrible. And New Yorkers avoid Times Square like the plague. But in your neighborhoods, you know everybody because everybody walks. It's not like the rest of America where everybody's in their cars.
And it's not just because of your status, because everybody knows you. These are people.
I know Richard, who is the UPS driver, and I know the guys at the flower store on the corner
and the bagel shop.
The bagel shop, yeah.
Do you have a favorite pizza place?
I'm not a big pizza fan. I think pizza's pizza.
Okay. Well, coming from Seattle, pizza is not pizza.
Well, there's a very good, what's it called? One that does Neapolitan style pizza.
It's like 8 minutes. It's in and out of the oven in like 8 minutes or something.
Yeah, it's thin crust. Yeah. I'm blanking on the name. I write Frommer's Easy Guide to New York City, so I update New York every year. I'm blanking on it. It's on Bleecker Street. It's very good.
Well, next time I'm in town, and that should be soon too. Next time I'm in town, I'm
Keste.
Keste, okay.
Keste. You have to go with someone else, though, because they only sell full pies.
Well, can I take it to go?
Yeah, sure. Except they'll frown on it because they won't think it's as good.
True.
if you let it sit.
And I do agree with that too. So, okay, so now I've been challenged. So we'll go to pizza when I'm in New York. So you mentioned your guidebook to New York that you're updating every year. Let's give listeners just like a really, really broad stroke vision of what you are doing now. And I know you have so many series, many kind of sub-series within the Frommer's Guides.
Not so many, actually, anymore. When about 4 years ago, my father and I, Arthur Frommer, took back the Frommer Guidebooks, and it became a family-run enterprise once again. We had been with other publishers, and through a series of events that I'm not legally allowed to discuss, we got the guides back. And we felt that having 5 books to Paris was kind of cannibalizing the market for those books.
So you had 5 books to Paris, and they all kind of had a different niche focus? To
a certain degree. I mean, I think we have a different strategy with the books. So we have 3 lines. We have the complete guides, which are beautiful, shiny, lots of photos, thick books, give you a sweeping view of the destination. We have the easy guides, which are meant to be very portable, much more concise, for people who want to just have a capsule review and go, to a certain degree. And then we have the day-by-day guides, which give an itinerary-based approach to the destination. So say you're going to Paris, it'll give you a way to walk and see the top historic sites. And then another one will be if you want to explore the architecture. And another one is a day full of romance. So it's all these different itineraries, each with beautiful maps. And in the back of those books, we have a refoldable map and a little kind of envelope so you can put it in and out of the book. Mm-hmm. It's darn cute.
Do you expect that people pick up each one of those guides and they use them in different ways? Or do you think that the person who's going to Paris, maybe the family is going to buy the complete guide, and then the person who is there for a week, maybe on a bigger European trip, they're going to have the day-by-day itineraries?
Well, our complete guides tend to be for countries more than cities. Okay. So we don't have a complete Paris. We just have the easy guide and the day-by-day.
I see.
But the easy guide is still pretty complete.
And then what's your responsibility in terms of all of that? I know you're co-president.
I'm co-president. I'm editorial director. So that means that I hire every single person who works on the books. And unlike other travel guide series, we use only 90% local experts, because we feel we get a deeper view of the destination that way. So I actually write the New York book in my spare time, as well as hiring people in Australia for the Australia book, in France for the French books.
How do you find those people?
Well, we're very idealistic about the people we hire. We want to hire solid journalists. So we hire the people who are writing the local magazines and newspaper articles, or who used to be, because unfortunately
they folded.
So many magazines and newspapers have folded, but that means that journalists need jobs even more than they used to. And so we're very proud to be keeping these journalists working.
Do you have resumes coming in every day then for people looking for that kind of work?
Yes, but we're picky. I like good writers.
Yeah. Do you meet with them personally?
No, I can't.
Okay, so you're Skyping and...
I talk to them, over Skype, over the phone. I read their writing intently. And we also have editors all over the world who I hire on a project-by-project basis. So we have photo editors, we have cartographers, we have development editors who work with the writers, we have production editors who are more involved with creating it as in book form. We have layout technicians. We've got a whole massive team of people, cover artists.
Do you have the main group of folks in New York City with you?
No, because we took over the books from Wiley Publishing. And Wiley was a multinational corporation. So they had all of the people who did production editing in Ohio and all of the people who did layout in Indianapolis. And so they all got fired when the company was sold. And so I've been able to hire them back, but it means I have people all over the place.
I see. So
that makes it good because I have an editor in London. I've got another editor in Italy. And so they're closer to the ground. They know what's going on, and they edit the Europe books.
Do you have an office in New York where you've got staff that comes in, or are you in a home office?
We're all remote.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's amazing because it's a huge operation.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it would be nice, but it doesn't really make sense.
No,
I think,
it doesn't.
because everybody is all over the place.
Right. I imagine you trucking into your office each day with your Starbucks and or your
I don't
local
drink
coffee.
Starbucks
well,
anymore.
I was going to say
you know, I went on the Whole30 diet, which took me off dairy and sugar, and I think of coffee as basically a vehicle for dairy and sugar. Without the dairy and sugar, why drink the coffee? It's just too bitter.
I know. I'm a decaf coffee drinker, and I just think, what do I call it when I go in? I just call it a like not a whatever, but why bother? I call it. Like, you should just give me a why bother, you know, but it's just that little thing. But anyway, I understand. So I do imagine you going into an office and you've got, you know, this huge group of people working with you, but it's just a different way. So you're working from.
I'm working remotely with people all over the world, which is great.
To me, because I also work with people all over the world in a little bit different capacity, because I've got tour operators that I'm working with who are in India and they're in Africa, and we're talking about oftentimes like a 12-hour time difference, and I imagine that's with you too.
Sure.
But what that means is that when an email comes in at 10 o'clock at night, you got to jump on it to respond.
Yeah, sure.
Because it'll be another cycle. It'll be another 24 hours before you can get an answer from them. So do you feel that kind of pressure of always being kind of online and watching what's going on?
You know, it's now a family-owned business. And if you know family-owned businesses, whether it's a publishing company or a dry cleaner, the family works harder than anybody who would be hired to do it works. I mean, not to say the people who are hired don't work hard, but, you know, it's our lives. So I'm working all the time, as my children will unhappily tell you.
Is your dad actively involved in the business at this point?
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. He's 88, but he's still very involved. He writes weekly columns. Both of us write, along with side the books, we both write syndicated newspaper columns with King Features. And he and I co-host a radio show that's heard nationally.
The Travel Show.
It's called The Travel Show. And then I also host another show on WABC in New York, which is called The Frommer Travel Show. So I do 2 shows a week. And what else do we do? I guess that's, and all the books.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
When you say
and Frommers.com, of course, we're
right.
all very involved with.
Yeah.
Which is our website.
So when you talk about the family business, you and your dad, and then are there other family members who are employed?
No, it's just Dad and I. I'm an only child. But people who are like family, Jason Cochran was an editor at Budget Travel magazine when we ran that magazine. So we've been working with him in different capacities for 20-odd years. Reed Bramblett, we work with constantly, incredibly talented writer. We have a guy named Zach Thompson. We have a woman named Dika Lamb, and they're all on the permanent staff.
Yeah. So not necessarily family business in blood, but definitely in spirit.
I think so. I mean, this is going to sound bogus, but when you work with people, they become your circle and they become your family. And I am very aware, having had bad bosses, of treating people ethically and being able to sleep at night. And I think everybody who's ever worked for me or with me would do so again. And that's what I'm most proud of. Well, one of the things I'm most proud of, because I think that's important, that you want to leave the world a better place, even if it's just in the circle that you deal with.
Where did you get that philosophy from?
From my father. My father was the son of immigrants. His mother from Russia, Poland. It was an area that kept going back and forth between the two countries, and Germany. His father worked in a factory all his life. And so my father raised me to feel that all labor is intrinsically honorable, and you don't treat people in different ways because they're doing manual labor rather than mental labor.
Or they're the UPS driver down the street that you see down the street.
Yeah, Richard.
Yeah, exactly.
My
Richard.
buddy.
Yeah. So I know this is pretty well documented, but just for listeners, let's get a little bit of a background. You said you're an only child. I know just from reading that that you were traveling at a very young age, at 4 months.
I started traveling
parents.
with my parents at 4 months because they had to go to Europe every year to update Europe on $5 a day and then $10 a day, 15. And when I was really little, this was before there were disposable diapers. or before they were porta cribs. So they would push me into a drawer for the night. And people often ask me, how many places have I been? And I can't answer because so many places I went to before I was really cognizant of it. But I get this strange sense of deja vu. So many places. Yeah.
So you started at 4 months. They were
Yes.
taking you. What are your first early memories of travel then? You obviously you weren't. You don't remember being pushed into that drawer or sleeping in the drawer. But what were the first memorable times?
I remember playing with other kids. My mother tells a story, so I don't know if it's a memory or or my mother used to tell a story. She died this summer.
Sorry,
that's all right. I don't know if it's her story or my memory. But I do seem to remember being on a pier and chattering away to a little Greek boy. And according to my mother, he didn't speak a word of English and I didn't speak a word of Greek. But we just had this great couple of days together in Greece. And I remember sliding down in Nice. They have these rocky beaches, and going down to the beaches are these stone stairs. And I used to like to slide on the stone banister, and I slid on it so much that I wore through the back of my bathing suit. So it was a fanny to the world.
When your parents were taking those European trips, were they always going to a new location each year?
No, we had to update the book, so we went to the same locations each year.
I see. Okay,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So it wasn't because I was thinking family vacation, but really a lot of work involved.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
That.
Yeah, my
Okay.
father and mother were running around all the time. So, yeah, we had people we would see every year who were kind of an extended family. We had the people who ran the Pensione Texas in Rome, who we'd always stay with, the wonderful gay couple who I grew up with and who were so kind to me throughout my life. They've unfortunately passed away too. And different people we would see in each city we went to.
Was your mom involved in the business at all?
Oh, yes, very much so. She wrote a lot of the sightseeing sections. My father started it before he was with her, and she was an actress on the side and was taught at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute in New York for 30-odd years.
And all the while still traveling and doing some writing of the guidebooks?
Yeah, I mean,
And the reason
they got divorced 30 years ago,
Okay,
and she probably would say that his career derailed hers. I don't know if that's really fair, but that's what she would say.
And the reason I ask and kind of probe about that is because she hasn't been as prominent. You don't see her name listed anywhere. So I just
Which
had
always
kind of
made her angry.
Yeah. Sorry, Mom.
Yeah.
That's too bad. So kind of big picture right now, working remotely, you're working with people all over the world. How many guidebooks do you have or books do you have that are considered updated and out there?
We have
as
about
published?
110, I would say.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we got the books back, we had to get them back on their feet pretty quickly.
Was that back from Google?
Yes. But so very luckily for me, a lot of people in the media business were out of work. And so I was able to find the most incredible people within a month of getting the books back, just because so many people, unfortunately, places had folded and they were at loose ends. And so I was able to put together this a team that probably a decade ago I wouldn't have been able to put together because those folks would have been in high positions in other companies. So it was my luck.
Tell me a little bit about just how you structure your day. Do you have daily habits, or is every day just different?
I would say most every day is different. Wednesdays are the most the same because on Wednesdays I pre-record one of the radio shows. So I go into WABC to do a lot of taping. But I get up around 6:30 and I check the email. Maybe I'll work out. I really should be working out more.
Are you still on the clean 30? Or the whole 30? Yeah.
No, now I'm somewhat paleo. I'm trying to be good, but it's rough because a big part of my job is reviewing restaurants. So with every guidebook, I gain 10 pounds, and then I got to whittle it away, which it probably is not very good for my health. But But I also get to go clubbing. I also get to go
How fun.
out. Yeah, my teenagers think it's hilarious.
How old are your kids?
They're 19 and 14.
Oh, that is funny.
And so they'll come home and I'll be taking a disco nap because I know I'm going to be out from midnight till 4.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. When I'm doing that chapter. Absolutely. And you have to see the city at night. And it's amazing. You forget how vibrant New York City is, in the wee hours of the morning, and how many people are out, and it's this whole different subculture, and people are often a little confused to see a 50-something woman wandering around, but they're always very friendly and happy to see me.
So back to your day. I'm sorry, I derailed you.
So my day, I don't really have. Really depends what I'm doing.
So you're not drinking black coffee when you get up in the morning?
No, I don't drink coffee anymore. Okay. So, I get up, I start checking I have a standing desk, so I stand there and I edit. If I'm in the middle of working on a book like I am now, I'll be giving notes to the author or incorporating what they said, or we might be working on the next broadcast, or I might be hiring people and thus reading deeply all of the local magazine articles from the cities that we're covering or the areas we're covering. It really varies greatly depending on the season and the day. And yeah.
How do you organize yourself? Because you must, I have a task list that is always 100 items long. And I'm always trying to kind of outsmart myself, I guess is a good way to say it. It's like, first it's Post-it notes, and then that works for me for a little while. And then it's a daily list, and that works for me. And then it's something on an app on my phone, and that works for a little while until I get bored or it's not as exciting to keep up with that. You must have a task list as long, if not longer than mine. How do you organize that, and how do you organize yourself?
Well, unfortunately, we're a smaller operation than we used to be under Wiley, so I am the person who creates all the spreadsheets. That used to be a different job. A separate person was doing it, but I've taken that on too. So I'm constantly having to update the spreadsheets for everybody in the company of what they're doing in terms of the book process. Jason Cochran is in charge of Frommers.com, so I contribute things to them regularly. But we have meetings to discuss, what needs to be next on the boards, and I put things in my calendar.
But within that, there still has to be, let's just talk about your day. And let's talk about, you are so generous for sitting down with me, so I really do appreciate that, because I just imagine you're very busy. And we're here at the Travel and Adventure Show, which I should say in the Bay Area. We're both lucky enough to be speaking here. But still, I imagine even with what you're doing, and you're talking about 2 radio shows, you're talking about doing research, you're talking about managing a lot of different people, you're making it sound very simple. And maybe it is. Maybe
it's not simple. The way I do it is I just fail constantly. I'm constantly failing.
Tell me what failure, define failure in your words.
What's define failure? I forget to return an email for 4 days, and we lose a potential advertiser to the website. That would be a failure.
Small failure, though.
Small but significant.
Okay.
That's the thing about, I think it was... what's his name? Leonard Bernstein, who said genius is talent and never enough time. And so you just got to forgive yourself for the failures and keep moving forward. So there's a failure every day, probably. But I just keep, you just keep plugging through it. You acknowledge it. You try not to let it derail you fully, because frankly, I don't have the time. I have had would-be writers come up to me and say, what do you do about writer's block? And I think what a luxury writer's block would be. I have so many deadlines that I just have to push through. And like when I was writing the first draft of my New York book, I gave myself a goal of 2,000 words every day. And I would stay awake until I had those 2,000 words on the paper. Because the great thing about writing is you can splat it out, and then you can polish and polish and polish and polish. So the next day I would polish it, but I made sure I made my quota every day, because I had to, because when you're writing a book, it's like building a house. You've got brick after brick after brick, and you just got to keep going. So to me, it's a constant cycle of attempting, failing, attempting again, maybe getting something that I'm somewhat happy with. Who was it who said there's never any satisfaction, just that queer divine dissatisfaction that keeps us going. I think that was Martha Graham.
I've been thinking a lot about failure lately because I hear it. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'll hear the term come up, and the question will be asked what's your greatest failure? And I think about that for myself, and I'm not quite sure that I can answer it because I don't view things as quote unquote failures. I just think that there are things on my task list that I haven't gotten done yet.
Right.
And I think about kind of like big picture things that I want to do, and either I've tried it or I don't have the time for it and it doesn't get done. Mm-hmm. And I could say, and it's actually almost better for me to reframe it as a failure because then I can put it behind me.
Well, maybe.
But instead, it's always lingering. And that's my problem, is that's why my task list gets longer and longer because I've got these things that just sit there. And I think, and that's why I'm asking about the failures.
Well, a definitive failure on one of our books, one of our best authors, her name got misspelled in the byline. And I felt...
On the cover?
In the inside cover.
Okay.
And I felt horrendous. And she will never work with us again. And it was such a stupid slip. And I don't know how it happened.
She was angry.
She was furious.
Oh.
She was humiliated.
Oh.
And I just felt terrible, that she just felt, and I'd love to have her back, but she won't work with us again. And so, we're all human. Those things happen. It doesn't mean that the books aren't trustworthy, because to be honest with you, we probably double check the content more than the bylines.
Right, sure.
And so... Anyway, so that was a major
failure.
There's an
example.
That's an example of a real failure, more so than not returning the email.
You had mentioned being in your mid-50s.
Early.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So you mentioned being in your 50s, in your early 50s, and I'm there as well. I've had actually a couple of conversations with women recently who have told me, they've said, it must be my age, and they were 50 and 52, I think, these two women, and they've said, it's the age I'm starting to feel kind of burnt out, or I'm not feeling as motivated to do things as I was once before. Do you ever get that feeling?
Or no, I don't. I think maybe because my life is so tied up in my work. It's my identity. I mean, I grew up as a Frommer. And I'm trying to keep this going. And so I'm extremely motivated to do that. But I do feel more forgetful. Like, I just, every day I seem to be forgetting something or other. But anyway.
Like the email that doesn't get sent for 4 days.
Like the email, or when I came here, I left my suitcase on the floor going through security. And I got all the way to the gate, and I was like, oh, my God, I'm not dragging my suitcase. And I had to run back to security, but luckily they had it. Yeah.
Do you usually check a bag?
Never. I've not checked a bag since I was a bridesmaid at a friend's wedding.
Wow.
And they lost my bag with the bridesmaid's dress in it. So
I'm the same. I'm very much a carry-on
me too.
person. So, and you said earlier that it's a luxury. People who have writer's block. It's a luxury, and so it's probably the same thing. It would be a luxury for you to feel burnt out or not able to be motivated because you have a business. You have a business to run and a responsibility.
Yeah.
So every day is probably
My husband calls me the Energizer Bunny.
Oh, good.
I just go and go and go. He is too. He's incredibly busy. He's a professor at Columbia in physical therapy, and to keep his job, he has to finish his PhD. So he's working full-time and getting his PhD. So we're both crazed.
Are you a morning writer or an evening writer?
I'm an all-day-long writer.
Are you? Okay, because you said you would stay up late to get your 2,000 words in, so I wasn't sure.
No, I just write when I can do it, yeah.
The Me Too movement has come up a lot in my conversations that I have with people.
Yeah.
You're a woman who's running co-president of a large publishing company. Have you felt that?
I don't know any woman who hasn't.
Can you talk about...
In fact, when Me Too first came out, I felt it should just be duh, but I'm really thrilled that this is being taken seriously in probably the first time in Western history. I mean, it's remarkable. Things that you just felt were part of life and that sucked now are being acknowledged for having sucked and maybe not. Well, I was an actor for many years, so of course that's where I mostly found the Me Too stuff. I did improvisational comedy with the troupe in Greenwich Village for a number of years. And there were a couple of games, and we were part of a larger comedy club show. So individual comics would go up before us, and then our little troupe would go up, and we would get people from the audience. And I remember being on stage, and this rowdy, drunk, frat-type guy got up, and we were doing a scene, and he grabbed my breast in front of the whole audience. And his brothers are like, yeah, go. I was in my early 20s. And I didn't know what to do because you're supposed to say yes to everything. You're supposed to keep going in improv. So I kind of batted him off and tried to keep going. And he grabbed me again. And luckily, my friend Jose, who was also in the group, jumped up and saved me. And I don't know why I couldn't. It's always haunted me. Why couldn't I have stood up for myself?
Yeah, in your 20s.
In my 20s, you know, and you're doing improv and you're trying to be a good sport and you're trying to get a laugh. But it was really a horrifying moment, and thank God Jose saw it and intervened.
Yeah. Do you find it in the travel industry?
Well, I'm not in the travel industry. I'm more in media. And in my corner of media, it's all women and gay men. So it may be happening among the gay men.
What do you mean your corner?
Travel writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is still travel, but it's just...
It's travel, but it's writing. It's not tour operators. It's not, cruise lines. It's really media. And in my part of media, it's mostly not a situation where I'm going to get harassed because of who I'm around. I'm mostly around women and gay men.
Lucky you. It's much more fun.
Yeah, it is. It's great. It's great.
I'm sure. Your guidebooks, are you still doing the Pauline?
No. The Pauline Frommer guides were discontinued under Wiley. I think they confused people. People didn't know what they were for. So I just do the Frommer guides.
Okay. It sounded really great because
thanks.
The philosophy behind it is budget but not for the backpacker. If I'm kind of interpreting
it was
that
spend
correctly.
less, see more.
Yeah.
So we did have hostels in them, but it was really about how to have a vacation where you don't have to be in a room with 20 other people and yet afford to travel more because you've saved so much on this trip. And it was also about authentic travel. And we're putting these into the general guides too, but we tried to find experiences that would allow people to meet locals beyond the concierge. Like in my Las Vegas book, that meant there was a karaoke night once a week for magicians. And so you would go and meet these magicians and watch them try out their new tricks on one another. And it was this fascinating subculture.
Yeah.
And in Paris, there was a dinner party you could go to, by a local and things of that sort.
Have you tried to translate that online, get that information online and keep it updated?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that a big part of your business now? I
would say 50% of our business is frommers.com. We get about 3 million unique users per month.
Is that all?
Is that all?
I'm just kidding. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's a big part of what we do, and that's supported by advertising. So we try and keep people coming by constantly giving great slideshows and articles, and we have forums where people can ask questions, and I'll often answer them. And of course, all of our guidebooks are online, so you can actually see the different recommendations for all the destinations we cover.
Yeah, but there's nothing like a paper guidebook.
Oh, bless you.
I'm just telling you. Yeah. There's nothing like it. I did try a digital version of a guidebook once, and I think I returned it. I just thought, this is horrible.
Well, we have an ebook. We have ebooks of all our books.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is, and this might be getting too inside baseball, but with ebooks, readers want to be able to control the font size so that it can go bigger and smaller. And so in books where we have photos and text, because the text is jiggling around so much, often the photos and maps get pushed into the wrong pages. So it's really hard to create good ebooks. Trying.
I can see for a reference, it would be good being able to highlight it. But, when I'm getting ready to go to a new destination, I just want to be able to crack open a book and I want to be able to highlight. Well, you're old school.
I mean, a lot of people are just training their phones on things. And the thing about that is, not to mention any names of businesses, but a lot of the people who now control search are trying to control the answers too. So they control the question and the answer. And they have a lot of writers who aren't necessarily anywhere near the destination they're writing about, and they have to write about what you're training the phone on in the most non-controversial kind of milquetoast way possible, because it has to go through this large corporate structure. And so I worry that a lot of people are going to be using those resources rather than resources like ours, which are journalists who we say, be opinionated, really make this come alive, rather than just give us the facts, ma'am, because the facts don't mean anything without context. So we want our writers to really draw a painting of the whole society and how this fits into it and why this matters. And you're not going to get that on those sites and apps and different thingies that you train your phone at, and it tells you this is the Eiffel Tower. It was built in blah, blah, blah.
Can you use an example of what you're talking about?
Well,
because I'm not quite sure if I'm following you, and what I am interested in is maybe how that is a bigger problem in the world today, like how we are, and I'll just say Facebook and what's come out about Facebook and how we're being fed information based on our likes.
I'm talking about the fact that we have monopolies running this country right now. And you have a major monopoly in a search firm who I can't name, but if they are controlling both the questions and the answers, in terms of travel data, if you search them and you get all of their stuff first, you're being brought into one worldview.
I see.
And so you're not going to get as varied and as rich a picture of the destination as you would if you got, material that sent you to Frommer's and Lonely Planet and Condé Nast Traveler and Beth's blog. And eventually, as all monopolies do, once they've driven everybody else out of business, they'll start charging for this. So we're in a very strange time.
I do think more people are using other search engines, and I think of like DuckDuckGo as one that's actually it hides your
DuckDuckGo,
right.
It hides your search history, which I like. I like my privacy.
Yes, I do. I like that as well. And I do see. I just see like more traffic coming to my website from other search engines like DuckDuckGo, and that's really encouraging to me. So
to us, it's negligible from other search engines.
But to get back to my question too.
Sorry, that was a major detour.
No. It was a great detour too. But what I wanted to say is, I just want to kind of put it out there. I think it's a bigger problem in general. Like you said, it's like when you've got these monopolies who are like just these really big companies who are pushing out specific information. It is really scary because I don't really think that that's come to light until the last year or so when it's become a bigger conversation.
Well, you look at TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor now makes the vast majority of their money through hotel bookings. So, and certain hotels pay them to
get listings.
To get a website on their list. And so they're not fair-handed players.
Yeah.
They do have motives. And so, there was a big brouhaha because they took down reported rapes at a resort in Mexico. And so, was that because that resort was paying them? Who knows? But they're the arbiters of supposedly user-generated information. But are they playing favorites because they're getting money from those hotels that they're posting reviews of? Not to mention, there was a whole thing on 60 Minutes about people who make a complete living by writing fake reviews. So Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, they all have teams of people writing fake reviews because they'd be crazy not to.
And that's happening online on Amazon as well.
Sure.
I mean, companies who have their products on there, you can read through it and you know what's fake.
Well, people
and what's
think
not.
they know it's fake, but I think they're getting much better at hiding what's fake and what isn't. So anyway,
how do we get around that? How do we? Is it just a matter of people like you and I just talking about it, so that people understand that
we have to elect better people. We have to get the current group out of office, and
but certainly our current administration, it's not their fault.
No.
this is going on.
And this happened under Obama. This happened under Bush. This happened under Clinton. We have to take monopolies more seriously. Because they really are putting a stranglehold on innovation in this country.
Net neutrality is one example where that is a direct administrative issue.
Yeah.
So pressuring our lawmakers, educating ourselves, because I don't think a lot of people are educated on this topic.
That understand
realize it. Right.
how much they're being
manipulated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely. My husband worked in technology, but his specialty was, I guess for lack of a better word, data mining and advertising.
Wow.
And he was good at it, left it, and is, I hope he's okay with me saying this, but repelled by it. And he knows how the sausage is made.
Right.
He knows the behind the scenes. And for that reason, we've got VPNs on our, on our devices, and we've used DuckDuckGo and, all of that just to kind of hide that, because it's terrible what we're fed,
absolutely.
and we're all sheep, just not questioning things.
Right.
It's like, it's really easy to believe just what's being force fed. So anyway, that's all to say that you should all be buying Frommer's guidebooks for your next destination.
What we do with them is we try and present the information in as opinionated, detailed way as possible, so that when you read our books, you'll understand, oh, wait, that sounds like a museum for me, and I don't think this historic site is going to be that interesting to me. I went to TripAdvisor the other day and looked up the Metropolitan Museum in New York City, and somebody put a review up about how great their gift shop was. And that was the review. And it's like, oh, come on. If you're going to write a review of the Metropolitan, you tell people where the Mona Lisas of it are, where the great works are, and you tell them that if you go on Friday night or Saturday night, it's open till 9 p.m. and nobody knows it. And so the whole place empties out, and they open the cocktail bars, and you can walk around with wine in your hand. And it enhances the museum-going experience. But you tell them not only that there's this incredible portrait by Rembrandt of a former slave, but who that man was and why this is such a unique and fascinating piece of history.
It sounds
not
like you've
just
been
art.
there once or twice.
Yeah, well, I write the New York City
yes,
book.
of course,
so,
I
yeah.
know. Let's go back a little bit, because we kind of skipped over this, or I skipped over this. So early travels with your parents, but then somewhere in there was your improv work and your acting work. What was your arc there?
Well, I went to college thinking I would major in theater. Thank goodness I hated the theater department. I ended up a history major, and that really has fed what I do as a travel writer.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Wesleyan in Connecticut. And after college, I went into theater. And so I toured the country with Les Miserables. I worked at a lot of great regional theaters, some of which no longer exist.
Singing or
I was
dramatic?
a singing actor. Yeah. My Achilles heel was I really never could dance, and I needed to dance better than I could. And then and in between, I would often collaborate with my father and help him with research and some writing, and I helped him so much with a book called The New World of Travel that on the last edition he gave me a co-author credit. And then when Frommers.com was debuting under the publishing company that owned the Frommer Guides at that point, they brought Dad in and he brought me in, and I started editing and writing, and luckily the web was new. Nobody knew what they were doing. So even though I had no experience, nobody else did.
Was that 2006, 7, 8?
We were one of the first no-nos well before that. 9/11 was what, 2001. So this was the 90s.
Oh my goodness,
yeah,
really?
we were one of the first on the
Yeah.
web. And so I started writing and editing, and I realized that I really preferred creating a product to being the product. When you're an actor, you are the product, and you have to perform in the moment, you have to make it right. And I loved rewriting. I loved editing. I loved the fact that you were shaping something outside of yourself.
Had you been traveling during that time as well? Or
Well, I traveled as an actor all the time. I mean, being in the the touring company of Les Mis was like being with the circus. I went all over the United States with that. And then I performed at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival and at the Indianapolis Starlight and at the St. Louis Muni. So I got to go to places all over the U.S. as a performer. And so I realized that I was liking it better than acting at that point. And so I made a switch. Although I never told my agent that I was leaving the business. My husband would always, because they'd call me up and I would just turn down the auditions until they stopped calling. But I left that door open.
So from acting, you jumped into writing and...
To writing and editing. I ended up as editor-in-chief of Frommers.com for a couple of years, and then I moved from that to being the travel editor for MSNBC.com.
Was that leaving Frommers behind completely at that point, or was that kind of part-time?
It was all part and parcel because we had a partnership. And then from there, the folks at Wiley lured me back to work on the Pauline Frommer guidebooks, and so I did those, and now I'm back with the Frommer guides. It's been through a lot of transitions, and that's life, right? You just have to go with the flow. You couldn't have predicted 30 years ago that everything was going to be online. What do you see kind of as the wave of the future, or what do you hope the wave of the future is? What I hope is very different from what I see. What I see is people going away from the written word. I think there's going to be a lot more verbal cues and visual travel.
In what way? What do you mean?
You're just going to say, Alexa or Siri or whoever, I'm in from where I am right now, where should I go? And Siri will tell me, which is another reason why I worry about monopolies so much. Because
so you really do see that, because that never struck me. Because I don't use those applications, right? So I see kind of Alexa as a home
It's happening
product.
in hotel rooms now, too. You're going to be able to lie in bed and say, I want the curtains open, and the curtains will open, and turn on channel NBC
Is that being
TV.
used now?
Yeah, it's being rolled out in hotels across the United States and the world. Yeah, and soon your face is going to be your boarding pass. They're testing this out in...
Like facial recognition?
Facial recognition. So it seems to, I think the world is going away from the written word, and that worries me because I think the written word is necessary for complex thought.
Do you think it's just, do you mean in general, or are you speaking specifically to travel?
In general. It's very hard for us to find young people who are good writers nowadays. Because even my own children, they don't read as much as previous generations. They're typing to one another more.
It's really easy to get sucked into a Facebook or into a social media, Instagram,
right? Yeah,
which is almost no spoken.
Not
even written word at all.
My 14-year-old is constantly just making faces into the phone,
doing FaceTime,
typing a couple of words. No, that's Instagram.
I have really mixed feelings about social media because it helps my business, as I'm sure it helps yours as well.
And it helps my life. I actually, because I'm on the road so much, I've gotten in touch with people from all parts of my life, and I see them when I travel, and that's an incredible blessing. So in a way, I'm thrilled with social media because my job, I think, is isolating in certain ways. I'm either at my computer writing and editing, which is just me and words, or I'm on the road where I don't necessarily know people. So social media has been my connection. So I have a mixed relationship with it.
So the future is more visual, you're thinking?
Visual and auditory. And I think, I worried that gives us less scope for complex thought because, there's only so much you can get from talking. Whereas a whole book can lay out a complex argument. And I'm not just talking travel, I'm talking all types of books.
Yeah. I've gotten into a habit of carrying a book around with me around the house. Mm-hmm. I work from home so that I'm not just going to my phone and scrolling through Facebook if I have 10 minutes or if I'm waiting for the tea kettle or, waiting for lunch to warm up or cook. So I've got the book there, so at least I can put my head into that because I agree with you. I think it is a really dangerous time, and I think it'll be really interesting in another 20.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, another 20, 30 years when we find out what that happens to us, just in terms of dementia. I mean, really, just to kind of put it out there, I think there's going to be a big effect on people.
It's going to be interesting. I actually got back into reading full books because my daughter wanted to be on Instagram. And when she's making the faces, that's actually Snapchat. And I didn't want her to be on that channel. I thought this was a year ago. And so I said, okay, if you will read 10 books that I assign and discuss them with me, you can go get an Instagram account. And it took her about 10 months. But I had to read them too.
Yeah. So what books are you reading?
Well, we finished, but we read Nickeled and Dimed by Barbara Ehrenreich because I wanted her to know about,
which daughter?
Economics.
This
is
how
my
old is your
younger
daughter?
one.
So
this is when she was 13.
Okay.
We read What is the What? About child soldiers in Sudan.
Ooh, heavy stuff.
We read... not all heavy stuff. We read The Little Prince. We read The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton.
This reminds me of, do you know Gretchen Rubin?
Yes, I know her personally.
Oh, you do?
Her kids go to my school. Her daughter went to my school.
Do you know about her YA group? So she's got like the young adult reading. She actually has a YA group where she gets together with adults and they read YA books. I'm almost positive it's Gretchen Rubin. I heard it on a podcast. She was talking about this and I was like, what a strange thing that she's doing this thing. But yeah, she's got in New York, right? So she's got these pockets of friends where they get together and they read. They love
YA books. That's so odd.
Yeah, I thought so too. I'll have to go back now. I'm questioning myself because now you're saying...
Is that because she wants it to be more in touch with the younger generation?
No, because she enjoys it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I feel like if you're going to have a reading group, do books that challenge you. I mean, do you really need a group to read YA? Not to diss Gretchen Rubin, but that just seems odd.
I don't know.
Like, I want to put together a reading group. This is totally off the fact, but I started reading a wonderful book called Post-War. And it's about Europe after World War II, and it's about maybe 1,200 pages long. It's a doorstop of a book, and each chapter is fascinating and gives you that history. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a reading book group where we each read a chapter of after post-war, and then read other books about that time, but each person read a different book. And so that we came together and had a real discussion about the history and what forces were shaping things, but all from different points of view because we had read different books. But that would be a hell of a lot of work to put together.
That would be. And my memory, because I have a terrible memory, my memory would be shot on that. I would never be able to remember anything from that. Yeah. Hey, one of the things I will say is that I started this thing where my husband and I, we get together for brunches with people on a weekly basis.
Oh, that's nice.
And it is really neat because you talk about kind of challenging yourself and not being isolated.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So you're not isolated. We're not isolated. And then just challenging yourself in terms of conversations with people that isn't angry news related stuff.
Right.
But it's just really fascinating. And I think we need more of that as a culture and as a society. I think it's
absolutely.
just so critical to us right now. Do you handle your own social media? Or do you have someone who handles that?
Dika is our social media manager. She's terrific. She's the wittiest person on Twitter. She is just hilarious with her posts. So she does the social media for Frommers as well as she does other work as well. But yeah. Yeah.
So you don't have to think about constantly about being on your device. And
I don't think I could have a job. I could do my job if I was doing that too. That's a huge job.
It is. I was just curious about that. Anything else that you want to cover today that we haven't chatted about?
Not that I can think of. I mean, we've covered a lot.
It is a wide range. Wide range of topics.
Yeah.
This is the Be Bold podcast, and I always ask guests what it means for them to be bold. What does that phrase mean to you?
Be bold means getting out there. It means facing your fears and learning and staying open to the world and not assuming that people who are different from you don't have your best interests in mind. That's a double negative, but it means being open and not letting fear guide you.
What do you fear?
What do I fear? I always feared getting fired, and I finally was. I had never been fired until about 2 years ago.
Who fired you?
Well, we had been doing our show on WOR radio station for about 15 years, and it was bought by iHeartMedia, and they fired all the hosts one by one. And we were actually the last to be fired. Yeah, they pulled us in one day after the show, so we didn't even get to say goodbye to our audience. And unfortunately, Scott, who was my friend, still is my friend, had to fire us. And it wasn't horrific. And we luckily scrambled and were able to get on WABC. But that took about 8 months of lots of scrambling.
Just to wrap up here, where can people find you on social media, online? What are your websites?
Frommers.com, Frommers is the main one. You can also find us on Instagram under that name, on Facebook, on Twitter.
And we can find your daughter on Snapchat.
You can find my daughter on Snapchat making all kinds of silly faces.
Where was the last trip you took abroad?
I was just in Chile.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
What were you doing?
Incredible.
Vacation?
My older daughter is taking a gap year. So she did a NOLS program, National Outdoor Leadership School. So she
did it in Chile.
She was hiking in Patagonia. Or actually sea kayaking and mountaineering in Patagonia. And so at the end of her NOLS, we met her in Patagonia and hiked for a week. And then we went to Santiago.
Oh, amazing.
We did the W Trail. Have you ever done that?
No. I was in South America for the first time in December in Peru.
Wow.
And just eyes wide open, gorgeous. And now
incredible.
I can't.
Yeah.
I just want to go backpacking for 3 months down there because I just was so amazing.
Chile,
so you enjoyed it.
Chile is spectacularly beautiful, especially Patagonia where we were. Every mountain looks like something out of a Dr. Seuss book because it's all so carved. And the reason is they're unrelenting winds all the time. I felt like I was hiking like a drunk woman because I couldn't walk a straight line. But it was incredible. It was great.
And what's your next trip?
Paris.
Oh, nice.
I'll be in Paris.
Research or vacation?
Daughter not doing so well in French.
Oh, so she goes to go brush up?
For spring break, right now, airfares internationally are so low. I found an extraordinary airfare to Paris, and I got an Airbnb with 2 bedrooms. And so we were looking at that or looking at going to the Caribbean, and it was cheaper to go to Paris by a lot, actually.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, have a croissant for me, please.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I felt really honored to have had the chance to sit down with Pauline for that conversation. We've met each other in passing for many years at different events, and she's always so delightful and just so open to chatting. She's really personable. I enjoyed getting to have a peek into her life as the head of Frommer's empire. So that was really fun. And she seems really centered and directed with the business and just super grounded. And I really appreciated that about her. A reminder that if you like what you hear on this podcast, please take just a moment to subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, or Spotify if you like. If you're on an iPhone, all you have to do is click on that little purple podcast icon and search for Be Bold. Please do share this episode with anyone whom you think might enjoy it. If you've got friends in the travel world, and hopefully if you're listening to this podcast, you do, please forward this along to them. And I also encourage you to write a review. It just takes a couple minutes on wherever you find your podcast. You can find out more about me by visiting wanderlustandlipstick.com. And if you feel like being bold yourself, you can join me on one of our Wander tours. We have trips to both North and South India, and those were just recently announced, so you can join one of those fantastic trips. Or you can come to Africa with me early next year, and that includes a trek up Kilimanjaro, a Tanzanian safari, and a gorilla trek in Rwanda. One of my favorite destinations is Papua New Guinea. I've got space on a co-ed trip there this summer, as well as a culinary tour to Santa Fe. That's a women-only trip in June. You'll find all of those on wandertours.com. If you'd like to connect with me, you can friend me on Facebook, and I'm WanderGal on Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter on the Wanderlust and Lipstick site, and you'll receive a series of tips for making your travels safer. And finally, the ladies can join us on our Be Bold Facebook group. We've got about 2,500 members in that group, and it's where we share goals, talk about our setbacks, and where you can find words of encouragement and inspiration from others. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast. Until next time, be bold.